Hi guys, this week we began working on multiplication using the array strategy. So I wanted to show you what we learned so that you have it to use for reference in the future if you need it. So we have been learning about repeated addition with multiplication and using a number line when doing multiplication and to help us out. And now we are going to learn how to use arrays when we are trying to figure out multiplication problems. How does an array show multiplication? Well, we can learn how by using swimming medals. This display has 4 rows and each row has 5 medals. How many medals are in Dana's collection? The medals are in an array. How does an array show equal groups? An array shows objects in equal rows and columns. Each row is in an array. Each row in an array has an equal number of objects in it. So you see here we have rows and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 rows, and within each row we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we've replaced the counter or the swimming medals with counters. You'll notice the side represents the rows and up on top represents the columns. The counters show 4 rows and 5 columns. Each row is a group of 5. Since there are 4 rows with 5 counters, we add 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 equals 20. We can also skip count by 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20. So there I've skip counted by 5s 4 times. And remember earlier this week we represented that on a number line. We practiced our jumps, skip counting with jumps on a number line. Since there are 4 rows with 5 counters, we added 5 4 times to get 20. 4 is the number of rows, and 5 is the number in each row. So we can also represent this as a multiplication sentence. 4, remember, equal groups, the multiplication sign means equal groups of 5. 4 equal groups of 5, or 4 times 5 equals 20. There are 20 medals in Dana's collection. So now we're going to practice a little bit together. I want to point out to you, because this is a good representation, that when you are working with arrays and when I start having you use the array strategy to figure out multiplication problems that you may not know, it is extremely important that you are placing whichever objects you choose in very neat rows and columns. So they have to kind of line up just perfectly. And sometimes when we're drawing, that's a little bit difficult to do, but you have to try as best as you can to get those rows and columns really neat and in line. So when we start drawing arrays, you may use any objects that you want. You can use hearts, you can use X's, you can use squares, you can use triangles. That's really up to you. The object doesn't matter. It's how you count the objects and how you line up your rows and columns. So we're going to practice together now. So I have labeled the side for rows and columns, and here we have our object is hearts. So we are going to count the number of rows. I have 1 row, I have 2 rows, and within each row I have how many? Well, this row has 1, 2, 3, 4, and this row has 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 2 rows, and they each have 4 in them. So 2 equal groups of 4 is how I would represent that as a multiplication sentence. Now, you have a couple of different ways you can solve this problem. One way is by counting all of the hearts. Now, this works fine in this array. However, when you have an array with 7 rows of 8, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. So that's where down the road, memorizing our multiplication facts is going to come in handy, or learning how to skip count by that particular number. But in this case, I can either skip count by 4s 2 times, I can skip count by 2 4 times, or I can simply count up all of the hearts. So for this particular array, I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2 equal groups of 4 equals 8. All right, I have hearts once again. This time, though, I have more than 2 rows. I have 1 row, I have 2 rows, I have 3 rows. 3 rows, or 3 groups of, how many are in each row? How many columns do I have? I have 1, 2, 3, 4. And because they are all lined up just perfectly, I know that there are 4 in each row. So I have 3 equal groups of 4. 3 rows with 4 in each row. Now, I can skip count by 4s 3 times. I can skip count by 3s 4 times, or I can add up the hearts. I'm going to skip count by 4s 3 times. I have 4 hearts here, and I know 4 plus 4 is 8. And I know the next number, 8 plus 4, is going to be 12. 4, 8, 12 is how we skip count by 4s 3 times. So 3 equal groups of 4 equals 12. All right, so now I have some triangles, and I have, how many rows do I have? I'm always going to start with my rows when I'm looking at an array. I have 1 row, 2 rows. I have 3 rows. I have 4 rows. 4 rows of triangles. Within each row, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And there's no need for me to keep counting because I know all of these columns are lined up just perfectly. So I know that each row has 5 in it. So I have 4 equal groups of 5. Now, I know that I learned how to skip count by 5s a long time ago, and that's the easiest thing for me to do. So I'm going to skip count by 5s, and I'm going to do it 4 times. We already did this in this lesson, actually. So I have 5, I have 10, I have 15, and what comes next when I'm counting by 5s? 20. 4 equal groups of 5 is 20. All right, guys, so this is just one more strategy in addition to repeated addition and using a number line. Arrays are just one more strategy that you can use when you have a multiplication problem to solve that you do not know how, you don't know it by heart, you don't have it memorized. This is just one more strategy that you can use, putting objects in equal rows and columns. Thanks, guys. I'll see you later.